I've always wondered why Rachel died so tragically, unlike other godly characters in the Bible. Unlike her co-wife, Leah, she wasn't even buried at the place Abraham bought as a burial ground for his family. Leah was buried there, Jacob was buried there, but she was buried by the wayside. So sad. She had only 2 children, and she died from giving birth to the second one. She named the child Ben-Oni, meaning son of my sorrow. This means the pain she went through at giving birth to him, but it may also mean the hardship she went through in life. Jacob's devotion was clear. He worked 14 years for Rachel. Her beauty was undeniable. But perhaps this beauty bred pride, fueling the bitter rivalry with Leah. It's possible she mocked Leah's lack of Jacob's affection. While the Bible doesn't explicitly state this, the intense rivalry between the sisters suggests a complex dynamic. We can infer that there might have been moments of subtle or overt superiority from Rachel, given her favored status with Jacob. Jacob's journey to marry Rachel was not straightforward. He initially agreed to work 7 years for Laban in exchange for Rachel's hand. However, on the wedding night, Laban deceitfully substituted Leah for Rachel, bringing her veil to Jacob's tent. This treachery forced Jacob to marry Leah. To then marry Rachel, Jacob had to work an additional 7 years, making a total of 14 years of labor. This act of deception by Laban set the stage for the complex and often painful dynamics within Jacob's household. It's important to understand why Jacob favored Rachel so strongly. Leah, described as having weak eyes, was not as physically attractive as Rachel, who was beautiful in form and appearance. This difference in physical appearance was a significant factor in Jacob's heart. He loved Rachel deeply from the moment he met her. God, seeing that Leah was not loved, opened her womb, but it was said that Rachel remained childless. It wasn't mentioned that God was the one who did that. The Bible doesn't explain why, but this act emphasizes God's sovereignty. This act set the stage for her deep longing and rivalry with Leah. This act underscores God's sovereignty and the complex ways he works in human lives. Rachel's family were idol worshippers. Laban, her father, clearly kept and valued household idols. Unlike Jacob, who was dedicated to the God of his fathers, Rachel grew up in a pagan environment. This background could have significantly influenced her beliefs and actions. When she stole Laban's household gods, this act reveals her continued connection to pagan beliefs, unlike Jacob's devotion to God. She was still under the influence of her family's gods. After years of working for Laban, Jacob's flocks had grown significantly, surpassing Laban's. This prosperity, blessed by God, began to cause tension. Laban's sons grumbled, saying Jacob had taken all their father's wealth. Laban himself changed his attitude toward Jacob, no longer treating him as favorably. Recognizing this shift and remembering God's promise to return him to his homeland, Jacob decided it was time to leave Laban. God instructed Jacob to return to the land of his fathers. So Jacob gathered his wives, children, and flocks, and secretly left Laban's territory. This departure was prompted by Laban's changing attitude, his son's resentment, and ultimately God's command. 3 days after Jacob's departure, Laban was informed that Jacob had fled. He was furious, particularly when he discovered his household idols were missing. Laban gathered his relatives and pursued Jacob for 7 days. Finally, Laban caught up with Jacob in the mountains of Gilead. God had warned Laban in a dream not to say anything good or bad to Jacob. This divine intervention restrained Laban's anger. Laban confronted Jacob, accusing him of stealing his daughters and, most importantly, his gods. Jacob, unaware that Rachel had taken the idols, defended himself, stating he had left secretly because he feared Laban would take his daughters by force. He invited Laban to search his belongings, unaware of the hidden idols. "But if you find anyone who has your gods, that person shall not live," Jacob declared. Laban searched every tent, but Rachel, having hidden the idols in her camel's saddle, sat on them and claimed she could not rise because she was having her monthly period. Laban, respecting this, did not search further. This act of deception by Rachel protected her from immediate discovery, but her actions set the stage for later consequences. Following the unsuccessful search, Jacob and Laban engaged in a heated argument. Jacob rebuked Laban for his deceit and his treatment of him over the past 20 years. Laban, in turn, proposed a covenant between them. They set up a pillar of stones as a witness, agreeing not to cross it to harm each other. This agreement symbolized the end of their contentious relationship and a commitment to peace. They then shared a meal and spent the night together. The next morning, Laban blessed his daughters and grandchildren and returned home. Jacob unknowingly cursed the thief of the idols, saying, "But if you find anyone who has your gods, that person shall not live." Could this oath, combined with the potential curse from the family gods, have contributed to her fate? Then there's the journey from Bethel to Ephrath. The Bible tells us Rachel died during childbirth on this journey. Childbirth in those times was incredibly dangerous, even under the best circumstances. The stress of travel, the physical exertion, and the lack of modern medical care could easily have contributed to her demise. Perhaps it was simply a tragic accident, a consequence of the harsh realities of life in that era. And then there's the question of her burial. Why was she buried by the wayside, away from a family tomb? Was it simply a matter of practicality, the urgency of the moment? Or was it a symbolic separation, a reflection of her troubled life? Leah, perhaps sensing her lack of Jacob's affection, may have turned fully to God. This contrasts with Rachel's focus on her own desires, shown by her stealing the idols. Perhaps Leah's decision to turn to God and focus on her children is why she was buried in the family tomb, while Rachel was buried by the wayside. Ultimately, God is sovereign. Whatever affected Rachel stopped with her. God's mercy did not allow whatever happened to Rachel to rub off on her children. Joseph, her son, played a pivotal role in saving Israel from famine, demonstrating God's ability to redeem even in tragic circumstances. God's plans are not thwarted by human failings. He can bring good out of even the most tragic circumstances. What lessons can we learn from Rachel's story? The lingering influence of idols. Rachel's story serves as a powerful warning about the enduring influence of idols. Even though she left her father's house, she carried the idols with her, both physically and perhaps spiritually. This reminds us that turning away from false gods requires a complete change of heart and a conscious rejection of past beliefs. If we cling to old ways, those influences can continue to affect our lives and have negative consequences. The power of words. Jacob's rash curse on the unknown thief of the idols highlights the power of our words. We must be mindful of what we say, especially when emotions are high. Our words can have unintended consequences, impacting those we love and even ourselves. Jacob's words, though spoken in ignorance, may have contributed to Rachel's tragic fate. Rachel's story is not easily explained. It's a complex blend of human choices, potential curses, and God's sovereign will. Was it a curse, a consequence, or a complex fate? Share your thoughts below. Like and subscribe for more biblical insights. Thank you for watching.